This episode of Doc Talk is sponsored by First Bank. We're not just your neighborhood bank, we're your neighbors. Our team lives up to the name, putting our customers and community first. To experience the First Bank difference, stop by any of our 13 Knoxville area locations or visit firstbankonline.com. First Bank, member FDIC.
Hi, welcome to Doc Talks. If you remember, Doc Talks is our podcast where we talk about different situations and diseases in plain language so that you can understand it better. I'm Elise Denaney, former president of the Knoxville Academy of Medicine, and I'm so glad that you're joining us today. I have a very special guest that I'd like to introduce today. His name is Dr. Cliff Tennyson. Dr. Cliff Tennyson is a great friend, a great colleague. He is the consultant for sports psychiatry at the UT Sports Medicine. So that comes with a great deal of amount of responsibility, as well as former president of the Tennessee Psychiatric Association. So today we're going to discuss burnout, right?
Right.
So welcome.
Thank you.
So glad
to be
you're,
here.
glad
Yeah.
you're here with us today. So tell me about burnout. What is it?
Well, burnout is possible in a number of different situations that we were just talking about a few minutes ago. Your viewers may be interested in or already might be familiar with the discussion about how there's a lot of burnout among healthcare providers. And so that's really led me to look at this in every area of life, in any job,
Right.
in any relationship, in your families. You could burn out in parenting. You could burn out in a romantic relationship. You could burn out from your hobby or your fun, your play. People burn out when they volunteer and they get tired of doing that. So burnout is related to what we call in medicine an allostatic overload.
Oh boy.
Which just means this. It just means that there are different kinds of stress. So there's good stress that happens to us when and we can recover from it fairly easily just by resting,
Right.
just by being physically healthy, just by staying connected with others socially, and having support. Then there's tolerable stress, which is a little bit more difficult, but we still have the social supports and we still have the internal wherewithal to recover from it in one way or another.
Okay.
And then there's toxic stress. And toxic stress is stress that's so awful, so horrible, and makes us so miserable that we don't have the internal capacity to recover quickly and effectively and efficiently. And we also find toxic stress in people who have isolated. They've pulled away. They don't have the social support to get the help they need to recover.
So is that a response or was that a cause? The pulling away.
Well, it could be either.
Okay.
But what I'm speaking to is it being a cause.
Okay.
Certainly, if you never recover, if you just don't have the capacity for being resilient to stress, and you find yourself burning out, quitting, pulling away, withdrawing, not wanting to be involved in whatever it was, work, relationship, fun, then if you can't bounce back from that, if you can't find the capacity for resilience, then certainly it can become a cause then for worsening even more and more and more as time goes by. So we want people to know that it is possible to recover and that all of life is basically stress and recovery.
I know there's not a day that does not go without stress.
Yeah.
Some stress actually makes me laugh, and then other stress just makes me rub my head or bang my head against the wall.
I like to tell people, let's consider stress and recovery in the same way that we consider being awake and being asleep. So we're awake all day and then we sleep at night, unless you have a swing shift job, which is not really very healthy, by the way. But so this is stress recovery, stress recovery. We're awake, we're asleep, we're awake, we're asleep. Sleeping is one way the body recovers, is one way. Inactivity can help you recover from stressing out bone, cartilage, ligament, muscle, nerves, other way.
So if I stress out my head, then how do I recover?
Well, rest is one way to do it. And the other ways include healthy nutrition,
Right. Right.
lots of health-related behaviors, exercise of some kind. Physical exercise is unbelievably important.
I know.
A lot of researchers have called exercise fertilizer for the brain. The brain will create this interesting chemical called brain-derived neurotrophic factor and other chemicals that are over my head that I don't even understand, but I do understand that one, which helps us with repair and recovery of the brain cells, neurons in the brain.
So you're saying that exercise will create a chemical in your brain, brain-derived neurotrophic, and that chemical is healing to our brain.
Absolutely. And guess what else is healing? Connectivity. When there are different networks in the brain, and when they communicate with each other, when they operate separately, we're still okay, but it's not as good. When they start communicating with each other, we start developing things that we didn't even intend to, like empathy, like a sense of connectedness with other people, that we start realizing, well, we're probably more similar than we are different.
Isn't that the truth, though? Yeah.
It is true. And so a way to practice that on purpose is to engage with people that you trust by revealing things, revealing your inner life when it's appropriate. Don't drive people nuts with it. But when you have a friend, when you have a relative, when you have somebody that you actually trust, it's not going to freak out when you tell them what your feelings are about things, that they're just there for you. They're just going to listen. So face to face, eye contact, you trust them, and there's 4 ways that we know that this changes brains, anatomically and physiologically. And the 4th one is you have the sense that the person is genuinely curious about you.
That you're valued.
That's the key thing. You're valued. They care about you. Now, they don't have to love you. The key thing is that you get the feeling that not only do I trust them, but this person is genuinely curious about me, so that I can say something and the person would say back, "No kidding." And he said, "What? And you did what?" Okay, that kind of curiosity, that kind of listening, pure listening, not trying to solve your problems for you. Those kinds of activities of connectedness heal, like you said, traumatized neurons.
That's really important. Today, I can see with all the stress that comes through either technology, job demands, and other extrinsic factors, that our brains are just, it's sometimes that kind of cartoon where you see a brain and then you see just electrical bolts coming out from it. And so to think of a place where the brain is restorative, it is healed, it is calm, it is either the sunrise or the sunset, right?
Right.
That helps. So you mentioned practice.
Mm-hmm.
So actually restoring your brain either through exercise or with connectivity.
Right.
Is that a practiced skill? Do you get better at it?
Yes, you do. We become what we do repeatedly.
Okay.
So we need to be careful what we do repeatedly. And that's very important. We're creatures of habit, and we develop mental habits. We develop physical habits. The mental habits are really hard to change. They take a long time. That's why a lot of therapies take a long time. Talk therapies take a long time. That's why mindfulness practices, different kinds of meditation and that sort of thing, they take a while. The researchers tell us that they take 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks
Right.
before you really start noticing much change. But it is possible. It is possible to change maladaptive, unhealthy mental habits into healthy, adaptive habits that help us be more resilient and recover better.
It's interesting you said 12 weeks. I thought, 12 weeks is not that long to practice something, to rest my brain. I think I remember the first time I had to either try to swim or sing or do something, I was a miserable failure, miserable. And then I thought, well, just keep trying, keep trying. And you get a little bit better and a little bit better, and then you get addicted.
Right. Well, it takes us a while to heal from anything. If I cut myself, it's going to take a while, but if we just protect the wound and don't keep cutting it, the skin will heal itself. It wants to. The brain wants to heal itself, and it will if we give it permission, if we allow it to happen.
That is a beautiful thought, to know that your brain wants to heal itself.
And it will.
And you need only to allow it to.
That's right. And there are practices that will improve the likelihood that that will happen.
Okay, so teach me this. How do I know when I'm hurting my brain, when I'm burning out?
One of the ways that we know that is when we lose our concentration more easily. Another way is that we begin to make more mistakes.
Ooh, okay.
We make more errors. And we know that they're errors after they happen.
Right.
And we're like, oh, what have I done? But when you see that happening more than usual, so more mistakes, a loss in focus and concentration and sustained attention, being able to sustain an effort from beginning to end starts falling off, and we're more easily distracted. Those are good cues. Those are very early cues. Things can get worse and worse and worse, and we can approach these things by having some stress management practices in our lives. The easiest of which, most people would say, most experts would say, is paying attention to the fact that you're already breathing.
Okay.
Breath itself and awareness of breath is a really interesting phenomenon, and it's been known for thousands and thousands of years, mostly through spiritual teachers that go back, and all of the ancient philosophies and ancient religions and spiritual teachers have talked about pay attention to your breath. And it's a part of every language on the earth that it's just common sense. If our friend is upset and her feelings have been hurt and she goes to another friend and we say, well, how was it when you talked to your other friend? Oh, I feel much better. Well, duh. It healed your traumatized neurons. And what did you do? What did your friend tell you? My friend told me, just wait, just take a break, just breathe, just breathe. And we know that it's in our language. We even know now that there are specific parts of the brain. There's one special one back here in the back of the brain, right next to the part of the brain that controls breathing. But that little special part of the brain doesn't control breathing. It spies on the part that's controlling breathing. and tells different parts of the brain what's going on. And when we breathe slowly and deeply on purpose, it inhibits the part of the brain that makes us anxious and upset, irritable and rageful. And that part of the brain reduces its activation because of the slow breathing. And people, I think, have always known that from the beginning of time. Just take a breath. So, and
Clever
it
brain.
actually calms us down physically. And we can actually see that now on brain scans, positron emission tomography brain scans, and functional MRI brain scans, and that sort of thing. And we know that these improvements can occur. So any kind of practice that you might engage in that encourages you to use slow, deep breathing from time to time is good. Staying with the breath, you don't have to slow it down and change it. Another way that you can stay calmer and more focused and not burn out so quickly from everything is just to spend time every day, just a few minutes. Some people say 3, some people say 10 minutes, some people say 20 minutes, but a way to just watch your breath going in and out without changing it, without judging it, without thinking that it's too deep or too shallow, too fast or too slow. Just watch it go in and out. A thought will always interfere.
It does.
It always will. And guess what? You can't practice unless the thought interferes. So it's not a failure. So as you're just watching your breath go in and out, a thought interferes and you turn toward the thought. Just notice it. Don't buy into it. Don't necessarily believe it. You can believe it later. Just notice, oh, I'm thinking instead of watching my breath. Isn't that interesting? Let the thought go very gently and return to the breath. And when you close that cycle, watching the breath, the thought interferes, you accept it for what it is, let it go, and return to the breath again. Guess what that is? That's one more rep in the brain gym for resilience, for recovery, and to ward off the eventual development of burnout and whatever part of your life is being overstressed.
That's a brilliant nugget. That is just a brilliant nugget. Because it resonates with me. I like to exercise, so it's just exercising my brain, just 8 reps a day, just to start out with, and doing that cycle, and not running after that thought, which always comes up in my mind.
Oh yeah. People say, "Oh, doctor, I can't do that because I can't stop thinking." Well, of course you can't stop thinking. The brain is a thinking machine, and there's no off button. And so, when the thought pulls you away, your brain is jealous. It doesn't want you to just watch your breath. It wants you to think this thought that I'm making for you. And you can think it later. It's probably good. It's probably a good thing to think the thought that your brain wants you to think. But when you're practicing on purpose, you just notice it, let it go, and go back to the focus on this magical, wonderful thing that we have already in us, which is awareness of breathing. And we're already breathing. It's keeping us alive, and we don't even have to remember to do it.
Well, there you have it. What a gift, right? Lives are always undergoing stress and recovery, and now we know how to handle when our brain is stressed and how to recover from that. It takes a little practice, but it is possible, and it is beautiful, and it just makes us better for ourselves and for others, which is pretty cool. So how do we get a hold? If we want just to learn more about it, what would you recommend? I know you are a consultant, so you don't do private
Not anymore.
Consultation. But if somebody, let's say somebody wanted to seek out professional help,
Sure.
What would you recommend?
Well, I would say the very first step to take is to talk to your primary care clinician. those are the folks out there in the world who know all the other people in town, who know the therapists and the counselors, the psychologists, the social workers, the professional counselors, and probably have a good way to either get either directly or indirectly to people who do stress management work, people who do mindfulness-based stress reduction work. But that'd be the first step.
Okay.
The second step is to approach a mental health counselor and see where they go. But I always tell people, and it's turned out to be true, that the first step is your primary care clinician. They probably know more about you than anybody else except your family.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. Thank you, Dr. Cliff Tennyson,
Sure.
for joining us today and teaching us more about ourselves and helping us to be better individuals. And that's a wrap.
This episode of Doc Talk is sponsored by First Bank. We're not just your neighborhood bank, we're your neighbors. Our team lives up to the name, putting our customers and community first. To experience the First Bank difference, stop by any of our 13 Knoxville area locations or visit firstbankonline.com. First Bank, member FDIC.